What would you do if you were a millionaire and saw your maid celebrating her birthday alone with a small cupcake and a candle? Leonardo never imagined that this scene would change his life forever. In the kitchen of his luxurious Cancun mansion, Maria blew out her candle, making a wish that seemed impossible. Subscribe to the channel to discover how a simple gesture can transform two lonely hearts. The kitchen clock read 9:30 p.m. when Maria finished washing the last of the dinner dishes. Her hands, rough from years of domestic work, trembled slightly as she dried the fine porcelain dishes, which cost more than her 3-month salary. The mansion was enveloped in absolute silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the steady ticking of the wall clock. Don Leonardo had left early that morning for an important meeting in the city and, as usual, had not returned until very late. The other employees had already gone home, leaving her completely alone in the immense kitchen that seemed larger than the entire house where she grew up. Maria sighed deeply, feeling the weight of loneliness settle on her shoulders like a heavy, cold blanket. At her age, she had been working in that mansion for 5 years and had never grown accustomed to the feeling of living surrounded by someone else's luxury. The white marble walls and stainless steel appliances looked at her indifferently, constantly reminding her of her place in that world. She put away the last plate in its place and took off the navy blue apron she wore every day. Her brown eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. Today was her birthday, and once again, she would celebrate completely alone. With tired steps, Maria walked to her small room at the back of the mansion. The room was modest but clean, with a single bed, a small wooden desk, and a crucifix hanging on a wall that reminded her of her late grandmother's teachings. She opened the drawer of her nightstand and took out a small metal box where she kept her savings. With trembling fingers, she counted the coins and crumpled bills she had collected over the past few weeks. She had just enough to buy a small cupcake at Don Joaquin's bakery a few blocks from the mansion. She changed out of her uniform into a simple olive green dress and put on her favorite shawl, the same one her mother used to wear before she passed away. The bathroom mirror reflected the image of a young but tired woman, with dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights worrying about an uncertain future. She tied her long brown hair into a low ponytail and pinched her cheeks to add some color. "Happy birthday, Maria," she murmured to her reflection, trying to smile. The smile didn't reach her eyes, but it was the best she could manage at that moment. The night air in Cancun was warm and humid when Maria stepped out through the mansion's back door. The city lights sparkled in the distance, but in that exclusive residential area, everything was shrouded in an almost sepulchral calm. She walked along the cobblestone streets, passing other equally imposing mansions, each protected by high walls and perfectly manicured gardens. The sea breeze carried the scent of the Caribbean, mixed with the fragrance of tropical flowers adorning the gardens. Maria clutched her shawl to her chest, feeling a mix of nostalgia and melancholy. She remembered her childhood birthdays when her mother would bake a homemade chocolate cake, and the whole family would gather in their small adobe house. Those times seemed so distant now, as if they belonged to someone else's life. Her parents had died in an accident when she was just 18, and since then, she had been completely alone in the world. She had no siblings, no close aunts or cousins to share special occasions like this one. Loneliness had become her most faithful companion, though not by choice. Don Joaquin's bakery was about closed when Maria arrived. The elderly baker, with his white mustache and kind smile, greeted her warmly, as always. "Good evening, Maria. What brings you here so late?" he asked while cleaning the glass counter. Maria shyly pointed to a small vanilla cupcake left in the display case, decorated with a small pink frosting rosette. It's my birthday, Don Joaquin," she confessed in a low voice, blushing slightly. The old man's face lit up immediately. "Oh, my dear, why didn't you tell me earlier? I would have made something special for you," he exclaimed with genuine affection. Maria shook her head, thanking him for his kindness, but explaining she didn't want to be a bother. Don Joaquin wrapped the cupcake with special care and gifted her a small white candle he had saved. "So you can make a wish," he said with a wink. Maria paid with the exact coins and thanked him profusely for his kindness. As she walked back to the mansion, she hugged the small box to her chest as if it were the most valuable treasure in the world. Back in the mansion's kitchen, Maria placed a small cupcake on the wooden table where she usually ate breakfast alone. The kitchen was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the large windows. She lit the candle with trembling hands, and for a moment, the small golden flame seemed to fill the entire space with its warmth. She sat in the wooden chair and contemplated her modest celebration. The cupcake looked tiny on the table, but to her, it represented an act of resistance against the loneliness that threatened to consume her. She closed her eyes and made the same wish she had made for the past 10 years, to not feel so alone in the world. A tear rolled down her cheek as she blew out the candle, and the kitchen fell back into darkness. "Happy birthday, Maria," she whispered to herself, cutting a small piece of the cupcake. The vanilla flavor mixed with the saltiness of her tears, but she ate slowly, savoring each bite. In the stillness of the night, the only sounds were her uneven breathing and the distant murmur of the sea, but what she didn't know was that someone else was about to arrive home. The black Mercedes-Benz stopped softly in front of the mansion's main entrance, and Leonardo Herrera stepped out, his shoulders tense in the stress of a meeting that had dragged on much longer than expected. At his age, he was the owner of one of the most successful hotel chains in the Riviera Maya, but success had come at a high cost. He loosened his silk Italian tie and took a deep breath, trying to release the tension accumulated over the past 12 hours of intense negotiations. The night breeze ruffled his slightly graying black hair, and for a moment, he allowed himself to enjoy the silence surrounding his home. His driver bid him a respectful farewell and drove off, leaving him alone in front of the imposing white marble facade that had been his refuge for the past 8 years. He tucked his keys into the pocket of his dark gray suit and walked toward the main entrance, but something stopped him. A faint golden light flickered through the kitchen windows, as if it were a reflection of a candle. He frowned, puzzled. All the employees should have finished their shifts hours ago. His curiosity piqued, and he decided to investigate what was happening. Leonardo circled the mansion via the side path, where jasmine flowers perfumed the night air with their intoxicating scent. His Italian leather shoes tread softly on the stone path to avoid making noise. As he approached the kitchen windows, he could make out a silhouette seated at the table. His heart raced slightly at the thought of an intruder, but when he got a clearer view, he immediately recognized Maria's figure. She was sitting alone in front of what appeared to be a small cupcake with a lit candle. Leonardo stopped dead in his tracks, feeling as if he had witnessed something deeply intimate and private. The image hit him like a punch to the stomach. Maria looked so small and vulnerable in that immense kitchen, surrounded by all the opulence he had accumulated over the years. The candlelight bathed her face in a soft golden glow, and he could see a tear roll down her cheek as she blew out the small flame. In that moment, Leonardo realized he was witnessing a completely solitary birthday celebration. His throat tightened with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. For the 5 years Maria had worked for him, Leonardo had barely paid attention to her personal life. He knew she was efficient, discreet, and reliable, but he had never stopped to think about who she was beyond her role as a maid. He saw her every morning when he had breakfast before heading to work, always impeccably dressed in her uniform, always with a polite and professional smile. She answered his questions with monosyllables, kept the house in perfect condition, and never complained about anything. But now, seeing her celebrate her birthday in complete solitude, he realized how little he knew about the woman who cared for his home day after day. A pang of guilt pierced him as he acknowledged that in all these years, he had never asked about her family, her dreams, or even when her birthday was. He had been so absorbed in building his business empire that he had completely forgotten about the humanity of the people around him. The image of Maria, eating her small cupcake alone, was etched in his memory like a photograph he could never erase. For the first time in a long time, he felt that his wealth meant nothing if he couldn't share it with someone who truly mattered. Leonardo stood still for several minutes, watching as Maria ate her cupcake slowly, while tears silently streamed down her cheeks. The scene awakened painful memories of his own lonely birthdays after his wife, Isabella, died in a car accident 3 years earlier. He recalled how he had spent his last birthday locked in his office, working until the early hours to avoid returning home and facing the emptiness of the mansion. The irony wasn't lost on him. He, a man who had everything materially speaking, lived in the same loneliness as his maid. The difference was that he had chosen to isolate himself from the world after his loss, while Maria seemed to be alone due to circumstances beyond her control. A strange feeling took hold of him, something akin to compassion, but deeper, more personal. It was as if he were seeing a reflection of his own fractured soul in the tearful eyes of the woman who had been under his roof for so long without him truly seeing her. His heart, which had been frozen for years, began to beat with an intensity that surprised him. He knew in that instant that he couldn't simply walk away and pretend he hadn't witnessed such an intimate and heartbreaking moment. With careful steps, Leonardo approached the kitchen's back door. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the handle, and the soft creak of the door opening made Maria look up, startled. Their eyes met through the dim light, and for a moment, time stood still. Maria stood up immediately, quickly wiping her tears with the back of her hand and smoothing her olive-green dress with evident nervousness. "Don Leonardo, I didn't know you were back," she stammered, her voice trembling, clearly embarrassed of being caught in her most vulnerable moment. Leonardo closed the door gently behind him and took a step forward, keeping his gaze fixed on her swollen, tear-filled eyes. "Don't worry, Maria," he murmured in a soft tone he barely recognized himself. "I just wanted—" He paused, searching for the right words. His gaze shifted to half-eaten cupcake on the table, then back to her brown eyes, which shimmered with a mix of shame and sadness. In that moment, something fundamental shifted within him, as if a door he kept locked for years swung wide open. Leonardo made a decision that surprised even himself. Leonardo looked at the small cupcake on the table, and then turned his gaze back to Maria, who seemed to want to disappear from the spot. The air between them felt charged with strange tension, a mix of her embarrassment and an unexpected tenderness on his part. "Is it your birthday?" he asked softly, though he already knew the answer. Maria nodded slightly, unable to meet his gaze. "Yes, Don Leonardo. I'm sorry for using the kitchen for this. I was just about to leave," she murmured, nervously beginning to pick up the cupcake crumbs. Her hands trembled visibly, and Leonardo noticed she was wearing a simple but pretty dress, very different from the uniform she usually wore. The olive-green fabric brought out the golden hue of her eyes, something he had never noticed before. "You don't have to apologize," he said, slowly approaching the table. "This is your home, too." The words slipped out before he could think them through, and both were surprised by the intimacy they conveyed. Maria looked up at him, bewildered by the unexpected kindness in his tone. An awkward silence stretched between them as Leonardo wrestled internally with a decision he knew would forever change the dynamic of their relationship. For the past 3 years, he had built emotional walls around himself, keeping everyone at a distance. But something about the image of Maria celebrating her birthday alone had touched a part of him he thought was long dead. He took off his suit jacket and hung it on the back of a chair, a gesture Maria interpreted as a sign he had no intention of leaving soon. "Maria," he began, and the way he said her name without the usual formal miss made her shiver. May I sit with you?" The question hung in the air like a vulnerable plea, and Maria felt the world stop around her. In the 5 years she had worked for him, she had never seen Don Leonardo show himself to be so human, so stripped of the authority that usually defined him. His eyes, which had always been distant and businesslike, now shone with something she couldn't identify, but that moved her deeply. I don't think it's appropriate, Don Leonardo," she replied in a barely audible voice, lowering her gaze to her clasped hands. "You're my employer, and I'm just—" "No," he interrupted gently. "Tonight, I'm not your employer. Tonight, I'm just Leonardo, a man who feels very alone, and just realized he's not the only one." The brutal honesty of his words hit Maria like a wave. She looked up and met his gray eyes, which now seemed vulnerable in a way she had never imagined possible. "Please," he insisted, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Don't make me celebrate my loneliness alone while you celebrate yours." The paradox of the situation wasn't lost on Maria. The richest man she knew was asking her permission to join her in her humble celebration. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded slowly and sat back down, not taking her eyes off him as he took a seat across from her. The space between them felt intimate in a way neither had experienced in a long time. Leonardo settled into the wooden chair, aware of how strange it felt to be sitting in his own kitchen, as if he were a guest. The last time he had spent more than 5 minutes in that room was years ago when Isabella was still alive, and they cooked together on Sunday mornings. "How old are you turning?" he asked, trying to ease a lingering tension. 28, Maria replied, cutting a small piece of the cupcake with a plastic fork she had brought from the bakery. "And you, Don Leonardo?" The question caught him off guard. In his entire adult life, few people had bothered to ask him about himself personally. 42, he answered, then added with a melancholic smile, "My birthday was 2 months ago. I spent it working in the office until 2 in the morning." The confession came spontaneously, and Maria felt a pang of empathy imagining this powerful man celebrating alone among files and contracts. "I'm so sorry," she murmured sincerely. No one should spend their birthday alone. Her words carried a special weight, as they both knew they perfectly described their respective realities. Maria split the last piece of the cupcake in half and, with shy but bold gesture, slid a portion toward Leonardo. "Would you like some?" she asked, immediately blushing at her audacity. "I don't have another fork, but—" Leonardo stopped her with a genuine smile, the first real smile he had shown in months. "I'd love to," he replied, taking the plastic fork from her hands. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange, and both felt an electric jolt that startled them. Leonardo tasted the cupcake and closed his eyes, savoring not only the sweetness of the vanilla, but also the strange sensation of sharing something so simple yet so meaningful. "It's delicious," he commented, and Maria smiled her first time that night, a shy but genuine smile that completely lit up her face. "It's from Don Joaquin's bakery in town," she explained. "He always makes the best cakes." Leonardo nodded, but his attention was entirely focused on how Maria's eyes sparkled when she smiled and how that smile transformed her appearance. In that moment, sharing a humble bakery cupcake in the kitchen at midnight, both felt something they hadn't experienced in years, a genuine human connection neither knew how to handle. "Tell me about yourself, Maria," Leonardo said after finishing his portion of the cupcake, leaning back slightly in his chair while watching her with an attention that made her nervous. "In 5 years working here, I realize I know almost nothing about the person who takes care of my home every day." The request caught her completely off guard. She had spent so long being invisible, just a pair of efficient hands keeping everything in order, that the idea of talking about herself felt almost foreign. "There's not much to tell, Don Leonardo," she replied modestly, playing with the edge of her dress. "I'm just a simple woman who needs a work to live." But he shook his head, leaning forward with genuine interest. "That's not true. Everyone has a story. Maria, where are you from? Do you have family?" The questions, asked with unexpected kindness, opened an emotional floodgate Maria had kept closed for years. Her eyes welled up again, but this time she didn't look away. "I come from a small village near Valladolid," she began, her voice trembling. "My parents had a small milpa where we grew corn and beans." Maria's story poured out slowly, like water flowing through a dry riverbed. She told him about her humble but happy childhood, where celebrations were simple but filled with love. "My mom always made me a homemade chocolate cake for my birthday," she recalled with a nostalgic smile. "It was small, but she decorated it with flowers from the garden, and she and my dad would sing Las Mananitas to me." Leonardo listened to every word with an attention Maria had never experienced from anyone. "That sounds beautiful," he commented softly. "What happened to them?" The inevitable question hit, like a soft but painful blow. Maria took a deep breath before continuing. "They died when I was 18. There was an accident on the highway when they were returning from a market in Valladolid." Her voice broke slightly, but she found the strength to go on. "After that, I had to sell the milpa to pay off debts and funeral expenses. I was left completely alone." Leonardo felt a knot in his stomach, hearing the raw honesty of her story. "And since then, you've been working as a maid." Maria nodded. "It's the only thing I know how to do well. I learned from my mom how to take care of a house, cook, and clean." "Have you never had a boyfriend? Someone special?" Leonardo's question came with a curiosity he couldn't explain, but that consumed him from within. Maria blushed deeply and shook her head. I've worked in 5 different houses before coming here. I've always been focused on earning enough to survive, she added with a bitter laugh. Besides, what man would want to be with a woman who has no family, no education, no money? Her words revealed a wounded self-esteem that Leonardo recognized immediately because he had felt something similar after Isabella's death. And dreams, he asked, deliberately ignoring her rhetorical question. What do you dream for your future? Maria looked at him in surprise, as if no one had ever asked her that before. I used to dream of having a family, she confessed quietly. A small house, a husband who loved me, maybe 1 or 2 children. But I'm already 28, and 28 isn't old, Leonardo interrupted firmly. You have your whole life ahead of you. But Maria shook her head sadly. For someone like me, it is. In my village, women marry young. At my age, I'm already a spinster. Leonardo felt a mix of indignation and sadness hearing her belittle herself. Do you know what I see when I look at you? He asked, surprising her with the intensity of his gaze. I see a strong woman who has survived devastating losses. I see someone who keeps my house like it's a palace, who never complains, who always has a kind smile, even when the world has been cruel to you. Maria blinked rapidly, overwhelmed by words she never expected to hear, least of all from him. I see a woman who deserves to be celebrated not just one day a year, but every day of her life. The silence that followed his words was heavy and charged with emotions. Maria didn't know how to respond because no one had ever spoken to her like that. Why are you saying this, Don Leonardo? She finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Because it's the truth, he replied without hesitation. And because I think we've both been blind to what was right in front of us. The confession hung between them like a revelation that would change everything. Maria felt her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. I don't understand, she murmured, though deep down. She was beginning to glimpse something that both terrified and excited her. Maria, Leonardo said, slowly reaching across the table to gently touch her hand. In 3 years of widowhood, I haven't felt anything for anyone. I've been completely empty inside, functioning like a soulless machine. But tonight, seeing you celebrate your birthday alone, hearing your story, seeing your strength, something woke up in me. His words made Maria feel dizzy. What are you trying to say? She asked, though her intuition already knew the answer. I'm saying that for these 5 years, while I was living like a ghost in my own home, the most extraordinary woman was right here, taking care of me without me even realizing it. Leonardo gently squeezed her hand. I'm saying that for the first time in years, I don't feel alone. Maria abruptly pulled her hand away, standing up with agitation. You can't say those things, she exclaimed, her voice trembling between fear and hope. You're Don Leonardo Herrera, a millionaire hotel owner, and I'm just a maid. But Leonardo stood up too, keeping a respectful distance but with determination in his gray eyes. Tonight, I'm none of those things, Maria. Tonight, I'm just a man who's discovered something he didn't know he was looking for. Tears streamed freely down Maria's face, unsure if she was living a beautiful dream or a nightmare that would destroy her. Maria backed away until her back hit the wall, her brown eyes shining with tears of confusion. This can't be happening, she murmured, covering her face with her hands. It must be a cruel joke. Or maybe you drank something at that meeting. Leonardo took a step toward her, but stopped when he saw her panicked expression. Maria, look at me, he said softly but firmly. Do I look drunk to you? Do I look like I'm playing with you? His gray eyes looked at her with an intensity that made her tremble. I don't know what to think, she confessed, sliding slowly down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. In 5 years, you've never said more than 10 words to me at a time, and now you're saying you feel something. Leonardo crouched down in front of her, keeping a respectful distance. You're right, and that's exactly what shames me, he admitted. I've been blind, an idiot so lost in my own pain that I didn't see the goodness in front of me every day. But you had a beautiful, successful wife, someone of your social level, Maria continued, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. How can you compare that to this? Leonardo sighed deeply before responding. Isabella was all those things you say, but our relationship was built on social convenience. We married because our families expected it, because we looked good together in society magazines. He sat on the floor in front of her, creasing his expensive suit without caring. I loved her, yes, but I never felt with her what I'm feeling with you in these few hours. Maria looked at him in disbelief. And what is it you're feeling? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Peace, Leonardo replied without hesitation. For the first time in 3 years, my mind is quiet. I'm not thinking about contracts, money, or obligations. I'm just here with you in this moment. His words were like a balm to Maria's wounded heart, but they also awakened a deep fear in her. Leonardo slowly extended his hand toward her, giving her time to reject it if she wished. Maria hesitated for a moment before taking his fingers with hers. I feel your hands rough from work, he murmured, and they seem to me the most beautiful hands I've ever touched. She shivered at the compliment. Do you know why? He continued. Because these hands have worked honestly, have cared for others, have turned this house into a home without me even realizing it. Maria felt her resistance beginning to crumble. Don Leonardo, just Leonardo, he corrected softly. At least tonight, just call me Leonardo. Leonardo, she repeated, and the name sounded strange but sweet on her lips. What will happen tomorrow when the sun rises, and you're the boss again and I'm the maid? The question was valid and painful. I don't know, he admitted honestly, but I do know I don't want to go back to being the empty man I was this morning. A comfortable silence settled between them as they sat on the kitchen floor, holding hands. Maria studied his face in the dim light, noticing for the first time the small wrinkles around his eyes, the tension he usually carried in his shoulders. Why don't you ever smile? She asked suddenly. Leonardo looked at her, surprised. What do you mean? In 5 years working here, I think I've only seen you smile genuinely once, she explained. Today, when you tasted the cupcake. The observation hit him like a revelation. I haven't had many reasons to smile, he replied thoughtfully. After Isabella died, I think I forgot how to do it. Maria felt a pang of compassion. The same thing happens to me, she confessed. I smile out of politeness for work, but really smiling, I don't remember how to do that anymore. They looked into each other's eyes and recognized the same wound, the same emptiness in the other. Maybe we can learn to smile again together, Leonardo whispered. Don't forget to like this video if you're enjoying this incredible story. Maria felt her heart racing dangerously. Leonardo, she murmured, using his name for the second time. I'm scared. Of what? He asked, gently squeezing her hand. Of everything. Of this. Of what I feel. Of waking up tomorrow and finding out it was all a dream. Her vulnerability completely disarmed Leonardo. I'm scared, too, he confessed. Scared of feeling again, of risking my heart again. But I'm even more scared of letting you go without trying. They stood up slowly, still holding hands. What do you propose, then? Maria asked, looking directly into his eyes. That we give ourselves a chance, Leonardo replied. That we discover what this is growing between us. Maria closed her eyes, fighting against all the fears and doubts assailing her. When she opened them, she had made a decision. All right, she whispered, but on one condition. Anything, he replied immediately. That you're completely honest with me. Always. If this is just curiosity or boredom, tell me now. Leonardo let go of her hand only to gently touch her face. Maria, I swear this is the most real thing I've ever felt in my life. 3 days had passed since that night in the kitchen, and Leonardo couldn't focus on anything but Maria. During the morning meeting with his managers, he found himself thinking about the way she had said his name, the vulnerability in her smile. Mr. Herrera, his assistant's voice snapped him back to reality. Do you approve the budget for the lobby renovation? Leonardo blinked, completely lost. Yes, of course, he replied automatically, with no idea what he was approving. His employees exchanged worried glances. In 15 years working for him, they had never seen him so distracted. "Are you all right, boss?" asked his right-hand man, Roberto. "Perfectly," Leonardo lied, standing up from the table. "We'll continue this meeting tomorrow." He left the conference room, ignoring his team's surprised expressions. He had only one thing on his mind: returning home to see Maria. During the drive to the mansion, Leonardo wrestled with a nervousness he hadn't felt since adolescence. How should he act with her? Had anything really changed, or had that night been just a moment of temporary madness? Upon arriving home, he heard the sound of the vacuum cleaner upstairs. Normally, he would have gone straight to his study, but now everything was different. Instead, he headed to the kitchen, where he knew Maria would take her mid-afternoon break. He took off his tie and rolled up his shirt sleeves, trying to look less formal. When Maria came downstairs 20 minutes later, she was surprised to find him sitting at the table with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Don Leonardo," she murmured, pausing at the door. Leonardo corrected her softly, standing to pull out a chair for her. "I thought you might join me for coffee." Maria looked at the cups in surprise. It was the first time in 5 years he had offered her a seat at his table. "Are you sure?" she asked shyly. "Very sure," he replied with a smile that made her blush. The conversation flowed more naturally than it had the first night, though both were aware of the uncharted territory they were entering. Leonardo asked about her day, the books she read in her spare time, her favorite foods. Maria answered initially with monosyllables but gradually relaxed. "Do you really read Sor Juan Inés de la Cruz?" Leonardo asked, genuinely impressed. "Yes," Maria replied, blushing. "I found a book of hers in the house's library. I hope you don't mind that I borrowed it." "Not at all. The library is there to be used," he assured her. "What's your favorite poem?" Maria recited a few lines from Hombres Necios by memory, and Leonardo listened, fascinated not only by the words but by the passion she put into reciting them. "You're extraordinary," he murmured when she finished. "How is it possible that in 5 years I never noticed the intelligent, cultured woman in my home?" Maria lowered her gaze, still unaccustomed to his compliments. "Because I didn't let you," she admitted. "I learned to be invisible." "Well, I don't want you to be invisible anymore," Leonardo declared, taking her hand across the table. "I want to know you, Maria. I want to know what you think, what you feel, what makes you laugh." His words sparked a revolution in Maria's heart. "This is very confusing for me," she confessed. "I don't know how to act. For 5 years, I was your employee, and now you're the woman who's bringing me back to life," Leonardo finished. The comment left her breathless. "Can I ask you something?" he continued. "Anything," Maria replied automatically. "Tomorrow is Saturday, and there are no other employees in the house. Would you like to have lunch with me? Not in the kitchen, but in the main dining room." The proposal immediately alarmed her. "I can't do that. What will the neighbors think if they see me?" Leonardo frowned. "What will they think about what?" "About a maid having lunch in her employer's dining room." As if I were, Maria faltered, and he gently pressed, "As if you were what?" "As if I were your equal," she finished in a whisper. Leonardo stood up and walked around the table to kneel beside her chair. "Maria, look at me," he said, taking her hands in his. "You are my equal. More than that, you're better than me in many ways." She shook her head, but he continued, "You're more generous, more hardworking, more authentic. You have an inner beauty that no amount of money in the world can buy." Tears began to roll down Maria's cheeks. "Don't say those things if you don't mean them," she pleaded. "Because if you change your mind tomorrow, you'll destroy me." Leonardo moved closer until their faces were inches apart. "Maria, I swear on my parents' memory that every word I say is true." He looked into her eyes. "Will you have lunch with me tomorrow?" Maria closed her eyes, fighting against all her fears and insecurities. When she opened them, she found something in Leonardo's gaze that calmed her. Pure honesty. "Yes," she whispered finally. "I'll have lunch with you." The smile that lit up Leonardo's face was so radiant that Maria knew in that moment her life had changed forever. Saturday arrived with bright sunlight filtering through Maria's bedroom windows, but she couldn't feel its warmth. She had spent the entire night awake, replaying the conversation with Leonardo. She got out of bed and looked in the small mirror on her dresser, wondering what she would wear to lunch in the main dining room. All her dresses were simple, suitable for domestic work, nothing worthy of sitting at the table where Leonardo hosted important business people. She sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of reality crashing down on her like an avalanche. "What was I thinking?" she murmured to herself. "How could I believe this could work?" The difference between them was vast, not just in money, but in education, social class, everything. Leonardo had studied at the best universities, spoke several languages, traveled the world. She had barely finished middle school before her parents died. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. "Maria," came Leonardo's voice. "May I come in?" She hurriedly put on a robe and opened the door timidly. "Good morning," she murmured, unable to meet his eyes. Leonardo immediately noticed her nervousness. "Is everything all right?" he asked with concern. Maria hesitated for a moment before responding. "Leonardo, I think I made a mistake yesterday." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "I can't have lunch with you in the dining room. It's not right." Leonardo frowned. "Why isn't it right?" "Because you're you and I'm me," she replied, finally lifting her gaze to him. "Because if someone saw us, they'd think what?" Leonardo's voice carried a tone she couldn't quite interpret. "That you're using me? That I'm your—" She stopped, blushing intensely. "You're what?" he pressed gently. Maria took a deep breath before continuing. "Your fling, your whim, your amusement while you find some of your level." The words stabbed Leonardo's heart like daggers. "Is that really what you think of me?" he asked, and for the first time since she'd known him, Maria detected genuine pain in his voice. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "I don't know what to think, Leonardo. This is all so new and confusing to me." She turned away from him, walking toward the window. "All my life, I've known my place in the world. I'm a maid, and now you come and say all these beautiful things that make me dream of the impossible." Leonardo approached from behind, but didn't touch her. "What if it's not impossible?" he whispered. "What if it's real?" Maria turned to face him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "For how long, Leonardo?" "A week, a month, until you get bored playing at being poor." Her accusation hit Leonardo like a slap. For a moment, he was speechless, processing the depth of pain hidden behind her words. "Maria," he began slowly, "I understand that you're scared. I understand that this is confusing. But what hurts me is that you think so poorly of me." He ran a hand through his hair, visibly frustrated. "Do you really think I'm capable of playing with someone's feelings like that?" She stared at him, searching his eyes for any sign of deceit. "I don't know," she repeated. "The rich have always had their fun with the help. It's something that's always happened." Leonardo felt a mix of indignation and sadness. "I'm not the rich, Maria. I'm Leonardo, the man who fell in love with you that night in the kitchen." The word love hung in the air like a bomb exploding between them. Maria froze. "What did you say?" she whispered. Leonardo stepped closer. "I said I fell in love with you." His voice was firm, unwavering. "No!" Maria shook her head, backing away. "You can't be in love with me. It's impossible." "Why is it impossible?" Leonardo asked, following her until she was cornered between the window and him. "Because you don't really know me," she replied desperately. "Because I'm poor. Because I have no education. Because you're the most authentic woman I've ever met," Leonardo interrupted. "Because when you talk about Sorwana, your eyes light up in a way that takes my breath away. Because you work 16 hours a day without ever complaining. Because you have such a noble heart that you chose to celebrate your birthday alone rather than bother anyone." His words made Maria emotionally collapse. "Stop," she pleaded through sobs. "Stop, please. Don't make me fall in love with you, too. Because when you get tired of me, you'll destroy me." Leonardo felt his heart break into seeing her vulnerability. "Maria, look at me," he said, gently taking her face in his hands. "I promise I'll never get tired of you. I promise this is real." But Maria pulled away abruptly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "You can't promise that," she said, her voice breaking. No one can promise that, and I can't risk my job, my stability, my heart for a fantasy. Leonardo felt like he was losing the most important battle of his life. Is that what I am to you? A fantasy. Maria looked at him, her eyes full of pain. You're a beautiful dream, Leonardo. But dreams don't pay the rent, don't put food on the table, don't provide security. She headed toward her bedroom door. I think it's best if things go back to how they were. You and your world, me and mine. Leonardo stopped her before she could leave. No, he said firmly. I won't let fear rob us of this chance. He looked directly into her eyes. I'm going to prove to you that this is real, Maria. I'm going to prove that you deserve to be loved like the queen you are. But Maria had already made a decision that would change everything between them. The following days were sweet torture for both. Maria had returned to her routine of being an efficient, invisible maid, but Leonardo wasn't willing to give up so easily. On Monday morning, while she was cleaning the library, she found a white rose on the shelf where she usually kept the duster. There was no note, but Maria knew immediately who had left it. Her heart raced as she inhaled the delicate fragrance of the flower. 4 or 5 years. She had cleaned that room without anyone leaving anything special for her. She quickly hid it in her apron when she heard footsteps approaching. Good morning, Maria. Leonardo greeted as he entered the library with a smile she pretended not to see. Good morning, Don Leonardo, she replied formally, reverting to professional address that hurt him so much. Did you find everything in order here? He asked casually. Maria felt her cheeks burn. Yes, sir. Everything is perfect. Leonardo nodded and left, but not before giving her a look that clearly said, This isn't over. On Tuesday, a small book of Amado Nervo's poems appeared on her bed, with a dedication written in Leonardo's elegant handwriting. To the woman who brought poetry back to my life. Maria read and reread it until she memorized it, but said nothing when they passed each other in the hallways. On Wednesday, she found a note in the kitchen that read, Your morning coffee is the best part of my day. Thank you for taking such good care of this house, and of me. On Thursday, Leonardo began having breakfast in the kitchen instead of the formal dining room. I hope you don't mind, he said the first time. I prefer the atmosphere here. Maria served his coffee without looking him in the eye, but he noticed her hands trembling slightly. How did you sleep? He asked her every morning. Fine. Thank you, Don Leonardo, she replied invariably. But both knew neither had slept well since that night on the kitchen floor. The air between them was thick with unspoken words and suppressed feelings. On Friday, Leonardo decided to escalate his strategy. That day, he had invited some American business partners to lunch at the house to discuss a potential hotel chain expansion. Maria was serving the meal when one of the men made a derogatory comment in English about the Mexican help, assuming she wouldn't understand. These people are only good for cleaning and serving. They don't understand real business. Leonardo stiffened immediately. Excuse me, he said in English, his voice cold as ice. I don't allow disrespectful comments about my staff in my house. The man flushed, stammering an apology, but Leonardo continued. Maria is not help. She is an intelligent, educated woman who runs this house better than most CEOs run their companies. Maria froze, hearing him defend her in front of these important men. Perhaps you should reconsider who you choose to disrespect, Leonardo added, his tone making it clear the business meeting was over. The guests left awkwardly, and Maria stayed in the dining room, looking at Leonardo with tears of gratitude in her eyes. You didn't have to do that, she said after the men were gone. You could have lost an important deal. Leonardo loosened his tie and looked at her intensely. Maria, listen to me carefully. No deal in the world is worth more than your dignity. He stepped closer to her. And let no one ever speak ill of you in my presence again. His voice trembled with contained emotion. Maria felt her defenses crumbling. Why do you do these things? She whispered. Why do you defend me? Why do you leave me flowers? Why? Because I love you, Leonardo interrupted without hesitation. Because every day that passes, I fall more in love with you. Because seeing that idiot belittle you made me want to kick him out of my house. Maria covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. "Leonardo, I know you're scared," he continued. "I know this is complicated, but I also know you feel something for me. I see it in your eyes every time you look at me when you think I'm not noticing." Maria could no longer deny it. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded slowly. "You're right," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I feel something for you, something that scares me and excites me at the same time." Leonardo took a step closer, his heart pounding like a drum. "And what do you feel, Maria?" She looked up at him, her brown eyes shining with a mix of love and fear. "I love you," she whispered finally. "God help me. I love you so much it hurts." Her words were like heavenly music to Leonardo's ears. Unable to hold back any longer, he closed the distance between them and gently took her face in his hands. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. Maria closed her eyes and nodded slightly, and Leonardo leaned in slowly until their lips met in a sweet, tender kiss filled with all the passion they had held back for days. When they parted, both were trembling. "I love you, Maria," he murmured against her lips. "I love you more than I thought possible." Maria clung to him as if he were her lifeline. "I love you too, Leonardo, but I'm still so scared." Leonardo hugged her tightly, feeling her melt into his arms. "I know, my love. I'm scared too," he confessed. "Scared of not being enough for you. Scared that one day you'll realize you deserve someone better." Maria pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "Better than you? Leonardo, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Her words were a balm to his wounded soul. "So, will you give me a chance?" "Will you give us a chance?" he asked, gently caressing her cheek. Maria took a deep breath, feeling like she was about to leap into the void. "Yes," she murmured finally. "Yes, I want to try with you." Leonardo smiled with a happiness he hadn't felt in years. "I promise I'll take care of you, respect you, and love you as you deserve to be loved." He kissed her again, sealing a promise that would change their lives forever. But what they didn't know was that their love was about to be tested in the most beautiful way possible. A full year had passed since that magical night in the kitchen, and the love between Maria and Leonardo had blossomed like the tropical flowers of Cancun. They had kept their relationship a secret, stealing intimate moments in the mansion, romantic dinners in restaurants far from the city center, walks on secluded beaches at dawn. Maria was no longer just a maid. She was now Leonardo's confidant companion and true love. But to the public's eyes, they still lived in separate worlds. She continued sleeping in her small room, he in the master suite. She still wore her uniform during the day, transforming into the woman he loved only in the privacy of their secret encounters. Leonardo respected her fears, but each passing day, he felt a growing need to shout to the world what he felt for her. September 28th was approaching again, and this time, Leonardo had very special plans for Maria's birthday. For weeks, he had been secretly organizing the most special celebration he could imagine. Not something ostentatious that would make her uncomfortable, but something filled with love and meaning. He contacted Don Joaquin at the bakery, who was delighted to help with a special cake. He spoke with Rosa, the town florist, to decorate the mansion's backyard with Maria's favorite flowers, jasmine and bougainvillea. He even convinced Mrs. Carmen, the family's retired cook, to prepare the traditional dishes Maria remembered from her childhood in Valladolid. Everything had to be perfect because Leonardo had made a decision that would change their lives forever. That night, in front of a few carefully chosen, beloved guests, he would propose to the woman who had filled his empty heart with light. The rings were ready, stored in a blue velvet box in his desk drawer. On the morning of September 28th, Leonardo woke up with a mix of nervousness and excitement that made him feel like a lovesick teenager. Maria had gone to market early, unaware of the preparations unfolding at the mansion. Leonardo personally oversaw every detail. The round table strategically placed in the garden, the warm lights that would create the perfect ambience at dusk, the small stage where a trio of mariachis would play Maria's favorite songs. Don Joaquin arrived at noon with the most beautiful cake he had ever created. 3 tiers decorated with edible flowers and a sugar replica of the small house where Maria grew up. It's so she remembers where she came from but also knows she has a beautiful future ahead, the elderly baker explained, his eyes misty with emotion. Leonardo hugged the old man, grateful for his understanding and affection toward Maria. Everything was turning out exactly as he had dreamed. By 5 p.m., the first guests began to arrive. Leonardo had carefully chosen the people who would be part of this special moment. Don Joaquin, his wife, rose to the floors with her family, Mrs. Carmen, a few trusted hotel employees who had come to appreciate Maria, and, surprisingly, he had managed to contact a distant cousin of Maria's from Merida who agreed to travel for the occasion. Each guest brought a simple but heartfelt gift. When Maria returned from the market at 6 p.m., the mansion was completely silent. "Leonardo," she called from the entrance, puzzled by the unusual quiet. She followed his voice calling her from the backyard, and when she opened the glass doors of the patio, she was met with the most beautiful surprise of her life. All the guests shouted surprise in unison, and Maria froze in the doorway, hands over her mouth, her eyes flooding with tears of joy and astonishment. "What is this?" she stammered, looking around the garden transformed into a paradise of lights and flowers. The mariachis began playing Las Mananitas as the guests surrounded her with hugs and congratulations. Don Joaquin presented the spectacular cake, and Maria cried when she recognized the sugar replica of her childhood home. "I can't believe you remembered what my house looked like," she murmured to Leonardo, who watched her with eyes shining with love. "I remember every word you've told me, every story you've shared," he replied, taking her hand. "Tonight isn't just your birthday, Maria. It's a celebration of the extraordinary woman you are, surrounded by all the people who love you." Maria's cousin, Esperanza, approached with tears in her eyes. "My dear, when this gentleman called me and told me how special you are to him, I knew I had to be here," she said, hugging her tightly. "Your parents will be so proud of the woman you become." Maria couldn't stop crying with happiness, feeling for the first time in 10 years that she wasn't alone in the world. The party unfolded like a beautiful dream. Maria danced with Don Joaquin, listened to funny stories from Mrs. Carmen, and received blessings and good wishes from every guest. Leonardo had managed to create exactly what she never knew she needed, a family of hearts that loved her for who she was, not for what she had. When it was time to cut the cake, the mariachis fell silent, and Leonardo asked for everyone's attention. "Friends," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Exactly 1 year ago, on a night like this, I discovered that the most extraordinary woman in the world had been living under my roof, and I wasn't wise enough to see her." Maria looked at him with curiosity, wondering where his words were leading. "Maria taught me that true love has nothing to do with money, social status, or appearances. It's about finding the person who makes your soul feel complete." The guests listened in reverent silence, feeling the depth of emotion emanating from Leonardo. Maria began to tremble, sensing something extraordinary was about to happen. Leonardo slowly knelt in front of her, pulling a small blue velvet box from his shirt pocket. The guests held their breath, and Maria felt her legs turn to jelly. "Maria Elena Reyes," Leonardo said, his voice trembling but firm, "a year ago, I asked if I could sit with you, and that was a night that changed my life forever." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring with a diamond that sparkled like the Cancun stars. "Now I'm asking you, will you sit with me for the rest of our lives? Will you be my wife, my companion, my best friend, the love of my life?" Maria covered her face, sobbing with pure emotion. "Will you marry me, my love?" Leonardo finished, tears streaming down his cheeks. The garden was steeped in expectant silence, broken only by the distant sound of Caribbean waves. Maria looked around, seeing the faces full of love and hope from all the people who had become her chosen family. "Leonardo," she murmured, her voice breaking, "all my life I felt invisible, insignificant, like I didn't deserve to be loved." She knelt in front of him, taking his face in her trembling hands. "But you taught me that I'm worthy of love, that I'm special, that I deserve to be happy." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she spoke from the depths of her heart. "You taught me that true love knows no social differences, that two hearts can find each other no matter where they come from." The guests were completely captivated, witnessing the purest love they had ever seen. "Yes, Leonardo," Maria said finally, her voice clear and strong. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to be your wife, your companion, your love for life." The garden erupted in cheers and applause as Leonardo slipped the ring onto Maria's finger. They stood and kissed passionately, sealing their commitment before God and all the people who loved them. The mariachis began playing Amor Eterno as couples danced under the stars. Leonardo and Maria swayed slowly in the center of the makeshift dance floor, lost in their own bubble of happiness. "Is this all real?" Maria whispered in Leonardo's ear. "It's not a dream I'm going to wake up from, is it?" Leonardo held her tighter against his chest. "It's more real than anything I've ever lived," he replied. "You're my reality, Maria. You're my present and my future." She pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "I love you so much it hurts my chest sometimes," she confessed. "I've loved you since that day in the kitchen, when you asked if you could sit with me." Leonardo smiled, remembering the moment that changed everything. "And I've loved you since I saw you blow out that candle, wishing to never feel alone again," he said. "Your wish came true, my love. You'll never be alone again." They kissed again, aware they had found their soulmate, their life partner, their true home in each other. The wedding took place 3 months later in an intimate ceremony on a Cancun beach, with the same beloved people who had witnessed their engagement. Maria wore a simple but elegant dress with jasmine flowers in her hair, while Leonardo waited for her at the end of a petal-strewn path, his eyes filled with tears of happiness. Don Joaquin walked her down the aisle, fulfilling the role of the father she no longer had. "I'm giving this extraordinary woman to the luckiest man in the world," the elderly baker said, his voice thick with emotion. Their vows, written by themselves, were filled with promises of eternal love, mutual respect, and unconditional support. "I promise to love you not only on the easy days, but especially on the hard ones," Leonardo said. "I promise to be your refuge when the world becomes too heavy." Maria, with a trembling but steady voice, responded, "I promise to grow with you, dream with you, build a beautiful family with you. I promise that every day by your side will be a new reason to thank God for bringing us together." When the priest declared them husband and wife, the sun was setting on the horizon, painting the Cancun sky with the most beautiful colors they had ever seen. The scent of chocolate and vanilla filled the kitchen of the new home Leonardo and Maria had built together, smaller than the mansion, but infinitely more filled with love. Maria, now 33, smiled as she finished decorating a birthday cake with 2 small candles. "Mommy, Mommy," a little voice shouted from the garden, "Papa is teaching me to plant flowers." Little Valentina, 2 years old, ran into the kitchen with her hands covered in dirt, followed closely by Leonardo, who carried their 6-month-old son, Santiago, in his arms. "This girl has the soul of a gardener," Leonardo said, kissing Maria's cheek tenderly. "Just like her mom." Maria looked at them, her heart overflowing with happiness, remembering that lonely night 6 years ago when she blew out a candle, wishing to never be alone again. "Do you know what date is today?" Leonardo asked Maria as they put the children to bed that night. 6 years since you asked if you could sit with me," she replied, snuggling into his arms. "The best day of my life," Leonardo murmured against her hair. "Thank you for teaching me that true love isn't sought. It's found in the most unexpected moments." Maria looked up at him, her eyes shining with the same tenderness as always. "Thank you for seeing in me the woman I didn't even know I could be." They kissed softly, grateful for the journey that had brought them to this perfect moment of familial peace. Outside, the Cancun stars shone, witnesses to a love that had begun with a simple question and had become the most beautiful story they could have imagined. This incredible story teaches us that sometimes the person who will change our lives forever is closer than we imagine, waiting for us to open our hearts. Maria and Leonardo show us that when 2 souls find each other, they can create something beautiful together, no matter where they come from. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss more heart-touching stories. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in true love. May God bless your heart with a love as pure and true as Maria and Leonardo's. Never stop believing in the miracles that can happen when you least expect them. Remember that you are valuable, that you deserve to be loved, and that your love story is waiting to be written. Until next time, and may God always be with you.